So let's probe a little more in regards to sometimes you just don't feel like it. Let's think about people who have jobs that if they didn't feel like it, what would be the repercussions of that? You wouldn't want somebody about to operate on you who just didn't feel like being to work that day. You don't want someone flying a plane who just didn't feel like working today. You don't want someone working in your mouth that just didn't feel like it today. Or even just again in our daily lives, even as a married person, sometimes you just don't feel like doing anything, and that's when you have to forget about yourself. You could be tired, and maybe your spouse wants intimacy. Sometimes you just don't feel like it. No, no pun intended, but just sometimes you don't feel like doing anything. You don't feel like cleaning up. You just want to relax. Sometimes you just don't feel like it. Even when it comes to, my prayer time, sometimes I don't feel like it. I'm just being honest. And I think if we all are honest with ourselves, sometimes you don't feel like praying. Sometimes you don't feel like studying the Word. There are times when you just don't feel like it. Now just think about with everything going on, people in the health care industry, if they didn't feel like doing their jobs. If people in restaurants or people supplying the food, people who are sanitation workers, if they didn't feel like doing their jobs, think about what impact that would be if we just didn't feel like it. So again, it just depends on what the situation is. When you don't feel like doing something, it could impact others in a major way. So sometimes we just have to forget about ourselves and not be selfish and do things when we don't feel like doing it. Okay? And I'm sure we can all think of times when, we don't feel like doing anything. Another situation that happened was when there are hurricane seasons, right? In Florida, Louisiana, um, those particular states. And I remember it was a gentleman, I think his mom, I don't know if it was the mom or the wife, wanted to evacuate. And so they did get on the road, end up getting in an accident, and I can't remember both the mother and the husband died, or if just the husband died. But sometimes we feel obligated to do things. And again, you want to be able to hear the voice of God. So there are times when other people may want you to do something. You don't feel like doing it, but you do it anyway. And it can be an adverse effect. Another example was, I remember my friend told me about her dad. He had some kind of sickness, and I think they wanted to do surgery on his brain. But he didn't want the surgery, but the wife and the kids said, you should have the surgery, you should have the surgery. So he did have the surgery, and I think he died on the operating table. So, and that's a hard pill to swallow for that one, because of course they feel bad about encouraging him to have the surgery. So again, when it comes to things like that, sometimes when you don't feel like doing something, it is best not to do it. Don't do anything out of obligation. But what I'm talking about today is sometimes you just don't feel like it when it's time to do things. Sometimes you don't feel like doing it. I remember going through school, sometimes you just didn't feel like doing your homework. You didn't feel like studying. You just have those times when you just don't feel like doing anything. But I just wanted us to think about the times when we don't feel like doing something and how it impacted someone in a negative way because we were just disobedient or just too lazy to do it or didn't feel like doing it because a lot of times we don't like conflict, or we um, don't like to address things that need to be addressed. And it's those times when we don't feel like doing things because it's like, man, I just don't feel like dealing with this. I don't feel like getting into an altercation. I don't feel like having conflict with someone. But sometimes things have to be addressed and we have to get it done. Again, ministry, because people will tire you out if you let them. So you can rebuke people in love. Sometimes people try to put a guilt trip on you, and I let no one do that to me. I will not do something out of obligation. I will not do something just because somebody wants me to do it. It just depends on what it is. If I know it's going to help you, then yes. But sometimes people try to manipulate and control you, and tell you, well, if you love me, you would do this. You hear people say that all of the time. Or even in church, like, if you really love Jesus, you would do this. I'm like, I know I love Jesus, but just because you want me to do it, I'm not going to do that because you're trying to coerce me to do something or put me on a guilt trip. No. So just consider what it is that you just don't feel like doing. When it comes to prayer, we definitely want to do that. If God is waking us up in the wee hours of the morning, we know that this is something we should get up and do, even if we don't feel like doing it. Because guess what? When you don't get up because you're sleepy, I know for me, if I disobey, God wakes me is waking me up to pray, and I don't, it just, my whole day is messed up. The day is not going to go well. So you might as well get up and obey. And guess what? It'll feel like you have slept for 8 or 12 hours when you obey God and He's waking you up at those times of the morning. All right? So just think about this topic. And again, I hope it's helped someone. And take care.